Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending. We'll have a few people show up, so please make room for people as they come in, or we can shame them by sitting in the front as well, so that's fine. And so we're the School of Medicine Career Center, and we're hosting Novartis today. We're very happy to do so. We have a few members from a diversity of places over at Novartis, so we're excited to have them here. So first thing I want to do is just have us go down the row, say who you are, your name, and what your role, what your title is in Novartis, and then we'll go through and talk about more details. So just your title for now.
My name is Yongjia. I'm from Novartis GNF site in La Jolla, and I'm a senior investigator.
Hi everyone, I'm Adi Nagel. I am a senior research investigator 1 at GNF. I'm a medicinal chemist, which means that I am leading a couple of medchem projects at GNF.
My name is Dennis Koester. I'm also a medicinal chemist. I'm an investigator too, and I just recently joined Novartis. With recently, I mean 2 years ago. And I'm at the Emeryville side, which is basically across the bay from here.
Hi, I'm Cornelia Bellamessina. I'm also at the Emeryville site for Novartis, and I am investigator 3.
My name's Colin Skepper. I'm a medicinal chemist like Dennis. I'm also at the Emeryville site. I've been there since 2012, and official title, I think, is investigator 3.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so just to get a little bit more in depth about what you do, can you tell us what you do in your position? So maybe a little more specific, what are your core responsibilities in your position? Go ahead and start with Tom.
Medicinal chemistry. So we have a range of projects, drug discovery projects in the antibacterial and antiviral area in Emeryville. And so as a medicinal chemist, your key role is kind of distilled down to basically design and synthesis of new molecules, which are then tested by our biologist colleagues for activity in various biochemical assays and cellular assays. And so you do a lot of data interpretation, which then feeds into your design hypotheses, which then feeds into your synthesis of new compounds, which then generates new data. And so it becomes a cycle of synthesis and design and data generation. And so ultimately, the goal is to end up with a clinical candidate. And so there's an awful lot that goes on in between there, but I'll leave it there.
Great, thanks. Cornelia.
So I am in the structural chemistry and biophysical group, and my role is as a crystallographer. I support the medicinal chemists and the computational chemists by solving crystal structures of the potential or lead molecules. And in design meetings, we work together as a team to come up with the next steps, what molecules they would make, what kinds of groups would be fitting in the active site, and make the molecules potentially more active. In addition, I sit on project teams because I've been there for almost 14 years. I have a large amount of information and knowledge about drug discovery. I sit on teams where the core teams help drive later on decisions for what's happening in the teams, what experiments need to be done, and what are the next steps to drive molecules to the clinic.
I do very similar things to Colin as a medicinal chemist. He already said synthesis and design are at the core of what we actually do. So at Novartis in Emeryville, we are looking at infectious diseases mostly. So that means we're looking at antivirals, antibacterials, so antibiotics, and also we're looking at tropical diseases recently. So Novartis is one of the few companies who still looks at those kind of things. And what I do at on a daily basis is, I want to say I do 80% lab work, where I actually, as Colin already said, like I look at data and interpret data, synthesize molecules, and then based off the data that I get back from the biologists, I make decision what molecules should I synthesize next. And I also do have somebody who reports to me, so I also work in collaboration with that person, and in a larger group setting where we discuss those results and make decisions together, so you don't make the decisions by yourself. And really, the goal is to drive the molecule or the lead that you have to the clinic that already was alluded to before.
So at GNF, we work on a number of diseases, namely tropical diseases, regenerative medicine, neurosciences. So as a medicinal chemistry lead, I liaison with different facets of science. So I interact with my biology colleagues, pharmacology colleagues. Then I liaison with my members of the team, motivate them to work in a different fashion, assign them different things to do. And at the end of the day, it's about managing project with different stakeholders within the organization.
So I'm a biochemist by training, and I actually work on the oncology biologist in the past 10 years. I've led the small molecule drug discovery program for lung cancer from the target validation all the way to the clinic. Right now it's in clinical phase 2. And recently I switched function slightly, and right now I'm going back to the biochemical side. And we are the groups, the chemists are sending the compound to us. So we are running the assays and to support the structure activity relationship for them.
Well, Yang, you already kind of started us off here, but my next question is, how did you get to where you are? So what's your career path?
I wouldn't say I have there's a set career path I have in my mind when I started the industrial career. I was trained as a biochemist, and of course, naturally, my first job, I was a biochemist, and I was supporting all the biochemical activities. I was hired by Abbott Labs in the Boston side, actually. And I worked there for about 7 years or so, and then another job opportunity came up in Novartis at the San Diego side. So I came here, mostly because of family reasons and also the personal reasons. And I came here, and there's again opportunity within the group, and there's opportunity to lead a project, to be a biologist, and this is a challenge. I thought, I'm very interested. I've been down in the biochemistry for a while, and this is something new and something more directed to the drug and directed to the people. So I just took it.
Great.
It turns out pretty well.
Adi, yeah.
So in my case, I did my PhD in University of South Florida, moved on to do a postdoctoral fellowship in TSRI under Pete Schultz. And about 2 years into the postdoc, there was an opening in JNF, which is right across the road. And I joined as a chemist at JNF and eventually rose through the ranks, and I am where I am right now.
Yeah, I'm basically a synthetic organic chemist by background. As you can hear from my accent, I'm not from this country. So I'm actually German originally, and I did my PhD in Germany on carbohydrate chemistry. And during that time, I also spent some time in Japan working on different types of projects where we activated some very strong bonds. And I worked on catalysis at the University of Münster. Later on, I did a postdoc here at Stanford, actually, with Barry Trost, right down the road here at the Lori Loki lab. And we were looking at asymmetric catalysis, so, very technical kind of things. And during my postdoc, I was kind of thinking, should I go for academia or should I go to industry? And when I learned about the opportunity that was given to me by Novartis, I was really excited, and now I'm in the industry for about 2 years, and I'm really excited about what I do, and I think that was the right path for me, and I would always do that again.
So I have an undergraduate degree in biochemistry and molecular biology, and after that I worked in a laboratory, and that's where I got my industry bug. It was an industry position, and I was fascinated by how fast things moved and how you could see things progress in a different way that academics doesn't have. I went to graduate school in Massachusetts, and then shortly after that I did a academic postdoc, but with an industrial twist. So it was paid for by industry. Again, flavor for industrial work, and I really enjoyed that. After that, I moved back to California to join Sujin, and after a 2-year stint with Sujin, I moved to Chiron, and Chiron merged with Novartis. So I'm at my position now.
So I guess for me it started in undergrad. I did my undergrad degree in Australia, and so when I was looking for sort of degree programs, there was a booklet which advertised something called a Bachelor of Biotechnology with a focus on drug design and development, and it sounded really fascinating. So I signed up, and it turned out to be more of a glorified Bachelor of Science, but that's kind of where it started. It's the idea that this was a possibility for a career path, and towards the end of undergrad, I realized what I needed to do was focus on something, and organic chemistry was what really interested me, sort of through undergrad research initially. And so I came to California and got a PhD doing natural products, marine natural products, and total synthesis, and wound up graduating from UC San Diego. And I did my best to not leave California at that point, so it became apparent that a pathway into industry was probably going to require postdoctoral work as well. So I got a postdoc position at Scripps in San Diego in the Berger Lab, and I was there for 2 years. And so in 2012, I was fortunate, I suppose, in a way that Novartis was moving its infectious diseases unit from Cambridge, Massachusetts out to California. And so the result of that is there was a number of open positions. And so that was kind of how I wound up here. I think Dennis mentioned, sort of this debate between going an academic route or an industry route for a career. And I think what kind of, I had the same debate myself, and I think what ended up crystallizing it for me was I felt like going in an industry, I had a better chance at doing something meaningful and sort of beneficial for society than I probably was going to be able to do as a professor. There are lots of that's a purely personal. That's how I felt. For me, I haven't regretted that decision.
Wonderful. So mainly who we have in the room are PhDs, postdocs, and some MDs. So with a variety of different skill sets. So can you tell us a bit about what hard and soft skills are needed to be in a position like what you're in?
So I think in terms of the hard skills is probably the easy one to answer. I mean, the technical skills are sort of a requirement, I think. As a medicinal chemist, what we're typically looking for is people who have a background in synthetic organic chemistry. But, beyond that, what we really want is people who are good scientists, who are critical thinkers and problem solvers. So the specifics of your experience are not, there are no hard and fast rules there. From a soft skills side, everything we do is team-based, so it's really critical that you're able to communicate with other people, particularly people who don't have the same background as you, so people who are biologists, people who are crystallographers, people who are in animal pharmacology and that kind of thing. So having those communication skills and being sort of okay with not knowing everything, because nobody knows everything, and you have to basically go out and engage with people and seek help from people, because that's the only way that our projects move forward.
So I'm going to expand on the communication skills, because as a soft skill, I think that's really key. Communication isn't just talking to each other. It's listening. It's understanding other people's point of view. It's getting your point across in a very clear, concise way. Sometimes it's convincing people that it's the right thing to do, especially when it means not doing it. It takes a lot of experience to do it well. I don't think I'm good at it yet, and I've been there 14 years. So that's a big thing. The other part of it is technical, but we expect that at the level of investigator where you have a PhD, that you are expert in what you do, but being able to communicate that to others and show them that you can do it in a very rigorous way is also important. So I think Colin had it right. The technical skills and the soft skills of communication is important.
Great.
Yeah, actually, Colin and Cornelia already stole my points, essentially, right? So as I have kind of a very similar role to Colin, the hard technical skills are really background in synthetic organic chemistry, kind of whatever you've done, may you have done like natural product synthesis or catalysis. We mostly want you to be, as he said, a problem solver and a critical thinker. That's really very important. And then the communication skills and interpersonal skills to work with people from different backgrounds is very important. To one thing that I might want to add is like the ability and the willingness to learn new things, right? Because you're going to be confronted with a lot of new things that you haven't heard about, and being open towards them, being able to kind of approach people, to learn things from them and have this kind of feeling that you don't know everything, so you might as well ask people. And if you're like a curious person and ask people to help you, that is definitely a interpersonal skill and a very valuable soft skill that you want to have.
Wonderful. Adi Young, if you don't have anything extra to add, don't worry about it. But if you do, please do.
No, in terms of hard skill, only point which I would like to stress is the boundaries of science are breaking. So what I'll urge you to do is, in case you are doing PhD in one particular area, think about doing something totally orthogonal for your postdoc and expand the diversity of your hard skill set. Because in industry, everything is very interdisciplinary. And while you're not expected to be experts in every single thing in the room, but there is an expectation that you would participate and understand what's going on. So that definitely helps.
I just want to say about like I think Professor mentioned, you are the PhD, and in the area you're trained and you're hired, you are the expert, and people come to you. So you have to have that hardcore, and you could go out to learn a lot of stuff, but you need to have your core there. And for the other skill, everyone works as a team, so you really need, no one can do, just one person can do everything. Even in the industry, even in the biology, we have in vitro biology, in vivo biology, pharmacology, all of these areas, and they all have their own experts in that area. So be able to work as a team, to be able to dedicate it, we have very tight timeline. And the project has preset timeline there. And if you don't reach that, you may be killed, the program may be killed. So you have to have a team spirit.
Wonderful. So now I want you to break it down into what's good and what's not so good about what you do. So what are your favorite parts, and what are some challenges that you experience at your job? Go ahead, Yang.
I think the favorite part probably is to be able to move the project forward, and this is really gratifying, especially when you are able to put the molecule in clinic and to see actually patient actually responded to the drugs you put in. That's a joy really hard to describe here. So this is what we go in every day, honestly, to go is, are we able to help another person, even just one patient? And as we work as a team here, and we work as an actual matrix system. Sometimes I serve as the project leader, lead the project, but all the members of the project, they don't report to me. So they all have their own functions. Just because we work at matrix, whenever our team needs some expertise, we pull it in from that discipline. So sometimes there's still, fine lines there, how to manage them, and to get things done.
I can imagine you have all these different people doing different things. When the project actually succeeds, what a joy that probably feels like.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Adi, go ahead.
Yeah, so Young pretty much nailed the favorite part is a potential to make a difference in the world, in the sense trying to find a treatment which, in a best case scenario, at least it will be reach clinical trial and you will get an outcome. And then it's not associated with the money, of course, because the money and glory goes to the company. It's the scientists behind it who do it. In terms of not so favorite part, again, it's very similar to what Yang said, managing people. So you can imagine every person, scientists who are very talented, have different aspirations, different ways of working or interacting in a team setting. And you have to work together as a team and make sure every single person is on board at all times and lead them as a group. And you can never, in any scenario, you never can be individualistic and just go solo. So that could be sometimes frustrating.
Where communication is key, I'm guessing.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually do love the atmosphere in Emeryville. It's really fantastic. We have a very intercultural, very interdisciplinary team, and I'm personally kind of a people's person, so I like to interact with different types of people from different backgrounds, different nationalities, and learn about their approaches to drug discovery, where I can learn a whole lot from them. So that is definitely one of my most favorite parts. Another part that I really like is when you synthesize a compound as a medicinal chemist and you get the data back on that and you interrogated the system and you get an answer, and that is kind of a positive answer, and you have the feeling you personally move the project forward. That is something very personally satisfying for me, I find. And I actually do like to work with people and manage people. I don't know why that is seen kind of negatively by my colleagues. One thing that I do see negatively, though, is the bureaucracy that we kind of have as a big pharma company. Sometimes things are moving kind of very slowly, and I wish things would move a little quicker at Novartis. So, yeah, I'll leave it with that.
I'm sure we feel that in academia, too, so...
I think my favorite part, like Dennis, is the team interactions. We used to have, and we sometimes still have, what we call design teams, where medicinal chemists, computational chemists, and structural biologists get together, and we just talk about what's going on in the structures. We're twirling them around real time. We're saying, I think you should put an amine group right here. And it's a really lively discussion. And it's never about egos, and it's never about who's going to make what molecule and who thought of the idea. It's purely about the science and how do we drive this thing forward. And I really, really like that. What do I hate? Notebooks. Documenting my work. It's tedious, but we have to do it. And it's electronic now, so it's a lot better. I don't have to sign things by hand. I used to have a signature that looks like medical doctors, but not anymore. So it's all good.
Yeah, I'd agree 100% with what people have sort of pointed out as the positive points about the job. I think for me, one of the things I find is that it's a constant learning process. Like I sort of underestimated how long it would take to kind of wrap my head around drug discovery, and I've discovered that it's an ongoing process, and I don't know if I'll ever quite get there. But that's kind of the beauty of it. There's always something new to learn, and there's always people around you who can help you with that. Some of the less fun things, there are some bureaucratic things that you just have to do, and there's no way around it. It's not a lot of fun. So signing your notebook is not a lot of fun, but you have to do it. Things like, performance management, documenting what you did during the year, or setting your goals and objectives, even when they seem quite obvious to you. You actually have to put them in writing. So, they're not fun, but they're really not a big part of the job by any means. So you just do it and move on.
Wonderful. So the last two questions I have for you are general thought questions. So the first one is, what would you like trainees to know about working at Novartis broadly? So any fun fact or anything particularly interesting you find about Novartis?
I mean, I'll give a plug for Novartis in terms of what I like about it as a research institute. I was coming into industry, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect from a big pharma. And what I ended up discovering in Emeryville was that research was not all that different from what I did in academia. And in many ways, it was more fun. It's very collaborative, it's collegial. You're surrounded by scientists, and everybody is interested and curious and motivated. And I think Novartis has done a good job in setting up a research institute, which we call the Novartis Institute for Biomedical Research, which is more or less separate, or it's a separate entity from the rest of the company, and it operates sort of autonomously, more or less. And so I think it makes for a very interesting, robust, and stimulating research environment.
So I think, as you might expect with industry, there's quite a few perks. So one of the perks is happy hour. We have happy hours, and we love them. The other one is a sabbatical program. So you as a scientist can invent something that you want to learn, talk to colleagues on other sites, develop a project, and go there for 3 months or 2 weeks or however long you feel it needs to happen. And if there's funding, and there's some buckets of funding to make it happen, you can go there and learn and do something completely different. So even, and as Addie was saying, keep your skill sets fresh, keep them updated, learn something new. And I think that's a really wonderful program that Novartis has.
I think a unique thing about Novartis is that they are one of the pharma companies who actually take care of neglected diseases. Like a lot of big pharma companies have moved away from this. And Novartis is one of the only companies who does non-profit research, and for example, in tropical diseases. And here I think it's very satisfying that you can actually treat a whole lot of patients that would be untreated without those kind of efforts. Rather than making money of it, you can see actual benefit from that. And also with antibacterial and antiviral research, you're basically giving people their lives back because they could die from a very terrible infection. And if nobody takes care of antibiotics, and we have developing resistance, as you all know, MRSA, and I don't want to even start, you probably know better than I do. So I think Novartis really takes care of that. And one specific thing to Emeryville that I can say is the atmosphere in Emeryville is really very unique. I have a lot of friends in the Bay Area working in different pharma companies, and I feel Novartis in Emeryville has a very unique kind of biotech feel almost, but then we have the purchase power of a big pharma company in the background. So this is very, very unique kind of atmosphere that we do have here in Emeryville, I feel personally.
So in addition to all the previous points which were made, in my mind, what makes Novartis unique is two things. So the culture in Novartis is non-hierarchical. So of course you got titles anywhere from directors to scientific associates. But in a team setting, everybody is equal and everybody is allowed to get their point across, irrespective of their rank. That's really, really important. Second thing is any data which is generated within the organization gets deposited in a centralized database with no filters, meaning the data which I see as a project leader is the same data which everybody else gets to see. So to me as a scientist, it would have been very frustrating if I'm working on a project, but part of the information is withheld for me for any number of reasons. That in Novartis never happened. So it's a totally transparent scientific organization, which is personally very important to me.
I just want to say a few things about our site, GNF. And GNF started by Peter Schatz, and so due to the long-standing tradition of GNF, it's more a research institute at the beginning at least. And even though right now we are emerging into the Novartis, there's still much stronger research environment compared to the pharmaceutical company. So if you have, especially if you have some, you want some freedom to do some research while doing drug discovery, this will be a perfect place for you. And another thing I want to say is we are only 5 minutes away from the beautiful beach.
That was a quick plug there. Okay, final question, and then we'll open it up to the audience, is what general career advice do you have for our trainees? You start with Jan. Go ahead.
So I think first I would say you have to be clear somewhat what you want to do, what's your passion, and what excites you, what interests you. So when I was in graduate school, and it was very clear to me, I want to go to industrial. I never even thought about academic. And maybe a lot of because of my family, like from a medical family, and so I always want to do something directly related to medicine. And now going to medical school, this is probably as close as I can get to a drug to people's health. So that's what I would would say you have to set your goal and your passion. You have to follow it.
So quick plug to come to the Career Center early. Go ahead.
I would like to make just 2 points. Follow your passion. So if you want to do something and you suddenly find out that you really want to come to Novartis because it's got the name associated with it, just follow your passion. That's really important in the long run. Second thing is stay curious always. No matter what you are doing, keep on reading beyond your primary thing. So everybody is good at keeping up with their area of interest. I will almost say pick up a totally different subject, could be non-scientific in nature, but read that and you will be amazed how much knowledge you will be enriched with over the years.
Definitely being curious is one of the major things that I also would recommend. Be, I want to say, interdisciplinary, like talk to people from different disciplines. I'm personally somebody who learns a lot from interactions with different people. So already if you have the chance and you are at one of the greatest campuses in the entire world, and there are really a lot of people from different backgrounds here, so talk to them, make use of that, right? Talk to people from different disciplines, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and you will learn a whole lot. That's what I would say.
Along the lines of follow your passion. Know what it is you want and what you like. If you are driven because that's the project you want to do, then don't expect that industry is the place for you, because things change in a moment's notice. Things gets dropped and you're on a different project. So if you are focused on one particular interest, then focus on that interest. And if you can find a place in industry for that, great. The other thing I would like to say is that relax. Take a chill pill when it comes to talking to people and understanding people, and enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it. Time goes fast and things move fast and projects move fast. But think about the accomplishments that you've made, the experiment that went the way you want it to, and the successes that your projects are moving towards, and enjoy those moments, because sometimes in science they don't come very often. And when you're in a group where things do move fast and projects do get dumped and changed, celebrate the moments that you had that were good, and celebrate the decisions to not move forward when that happens. So think about the big picture sometimes.
I think one thing I would recommend is, as you're going through research, whether it's in grad school or a postdoc, when things aren't going well, when things aren't working, that's actually that's a time when you probably learn the most, particularly when you're stressed as well, actually, for that matter. So if you're running into problems, I would look at it as a way to treat it as an opportunity to solve problems. And these will become good opportunities to, demonstrate what you can do as a scientist when it comes to looking for a job in industry and interviewing industry. These are the kinds of questions that will come up when you interview. The other thing I would sort of echo what Dennis said about sort of opening yourself up to the people who are around you. There's an awful lot you can learn from the person who works in the hood next to you, or down the hall, or in a different building. And so, it comes more easily to some people than others. Some people are very open and gregarious, and Dennis is a great example. He's great at that. Other people, you have to make the effort, and I'm more of the latter. So, it always pays off.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll open it up to you guys. When you pose a question, we'll have 1 to 2 panelists answer, just so we get through a few questions. And then a little after 6, we'll have some opportunities for you to come up and network with these folks. So don't worry, you'll have time to talk if you didn't get the opportunity to. But what questions are there? Yeah, go ahead.
You guys all stress the importance of communication skills, and I'd like to know, how do you communicate through your cover letter or your CV, how good your communication skills are? For example, I know a lot of people, myself included, who will not have co-authors. It'll just be me and my PI. That's very typical in my lab, even though we're very collaborative. So I know I talk to people, I float around, and I ask about their projects and what they know and get help, but I don't know how to prove that. Do you have any advice?
So how do you show collaboration in your working documents like CV and cover letter?
Yeah, to get that interview in the company.
I see. Okay, yeah. What suggestions, what advice do you have?
I think communication style shows through in your cover letters. I think and I think it's important to have a cover letter. So don't anyone say that it's not, because I read them all the time. So.
So not optional. Optional, but not optional.
Yes. A resume gives you sort of the synopsis. It's a bullet point. It's short. It's, I know what you can do. The cover letter gives you a more flavorful description. It's narrative. It does show personality. It may not show collaboration, but I think you can put that in there in different ways. Say it's the royal we. It's it's the idea that it's open to discussion. It's and flavorful. So I think you can make those points in a cover letter.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that? Let's go ahead.
So one of the things I find when you apply to a job, it's great to have a good network. So that kind of gets off your point a little bit. But so I find it's really, especially being here, I'm from Germany personally, right? So at Stanford, I feel companies actually pick you up the campus and take you to the job already, right? So have a network of people, kind of, interact with people. And then as Cornelia already said, if you are telling a great story in your cover letter, right, and it's really a lot about storytelling, so set up some kind of nice narrative. Even if you're authoring publications only by yourself, that doesn't mean you're uncollaborative. And communication, doesn't only show in collaboration, but you can also be communicating in a paper. How do you tell the story, right? And in a CV also, like, how nicely written is the CV. And we do pay attention to those kind of things because storytelling, I think, is one of the most looked for soft skills that we would like to have in industry, because we need people to present research to teams. Communication needs to be clear in the company and also outside the company. So we do look for great storytellers, and those people will be great business people and hopefully also great scientists.
Wonderful. What other questions are out there? Yeah.
They're too specialized because you have 5 years. Or is there an average from your colleagues? Let's say 2 or 3 years. Then they're 7 years.
So I'll repeat the question just so everyone hears, but basically to distill down, the question is how many years of a postdoc is good versus too much versus not enough, or how useful is it overall? Yeah.
So I think I can give you a non-satisfactory answer. So there is nothing in the guidelines which says that X number of years of postdocs is needed, or beyond a certain number, it becomes too much. What it boils down to is when your CV it's compared to the job description, what the hiring manager is looking for. And at that point of time, it's his or her decision whether you would be a good fit for the job or not. And I think that's what it boils down to.
I can only speak from the biology side, and I think right now we all know biology postdocs going longer and longer. So at least from our experience, we really don't discriminate, and we don't say, because this person did 5-year postdoc, we're not going to call him or something. So it's more straightforward. But again, come down at eventually the hiring manager. That's his or her decision to decide which resumes to follow up.
Just I'll answer as well from the Career Center perspective. So often what we tell postdocs who are making that decision between industry and academia, and please let me know if you agree or disagree here, is it's good to know after a few years if you're wanting to make the switch or not. Because if you do a 7 or 8 year postdoc and don't signal at any point that you want to go into industry, it can be hard to break the industry wall then, because you've signaled for the last 7 years that you're going to go into academia. So a 7-year postdoc isn't bad, but if you haven't made any industry signals, it's not easy to do that switch. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So I noticed that at least one or two of you work other than Novartis for positions, and I'm just wondering if you can remark on the experiences you had with that, like the culture or anything like that.
Okay, so quick overview is you've worked at other companies, some of you. What's it like at these other companies? What's the difference between them and Novartis in some ways?
All right. So I worked at Abbott for about 7 years, and then Novartis for about 10 years. So it's about equal time. So Abbott it's a Midwestern company, and so the corporate culture is very corporate, and the letters are very strict in a way, and also overall feel is. At the time I was there, I didn't know about this. Now later, I realized it really moves things rather slowly. Just give you one example. For our drug discovery, the first step we run is a high throughput screening. I'm not sure how many people knows about that. And so you string about 2 million compound library through a biochemical cell assay. At Abbott, we probably will take about 3 to 4 months to run one screen. So when I came to the GNF here, it was really amazed me, like we take about 2 to 3 weeks to run a screen. So it moves much, much faster. And another thing there is efficiency at where we are. And each of us had multiple programs. We may need one, but we support another one. And which is also, with the amount of people and the program we are running, personally, I felt it was really amazing. We can do that.
So my experience is on the West Coast, and so I think maybe West Coast culture kind of dominated a bit. Both Sugen, which I worked for 2 years, was owned by Pharmacia. So again, biotech flavor because we were a subsidiary, but backing of a large company. And the culture there was biotech-ish. So it was vibrant and fast-moving and fast-paced and collaborative and really exciting. After that, I moved to Chiron, and Chiron was a larger corporation, and it was regoing some changes in terms of management style and really driving from more biotech to more drug discovery and very focused. It still had a biotech flavor, but it was much more corporate. When Novartis first came in, they didn't change any management style. And I really appreciated that because they allowed us to keep our culture before we kind of merged together. And we've always been, because now that's the same Emeryville site, we've managed to keep some of that biotech flavor. So it's a lot like Sugen, but not quite. And again, biotech flavor, but you still have this big corporation in the background. And I think that's the best of both worlds. You have the freedom to operate, the freedom to communicate quickly and rapidly with your colleagues because the project's co-localized. All the people you need on your project teams are co-localized. But when you need something in a larger scale, it's there. And yeah, sometimes it takes a little while for it to move so that you can get to get that resources because it's in line with all the other high throughput screening. But it's there for you.
Thank you. What other questions do you have? Yeah, in fact. Ooh, so tell us about the Novartis postdoc program.
So actually, I haven't had any direct involvement with the postdoc program, but I've watched other people mentor postdocs. The way it typically works is there's a call for nominations for people within the company to write basically a proposal for a project, and a certain number of projects are reviewed and then approved, and then you basically you go out and solicit applications for a postdoc. So. So I guess one part of your question was, how does it differ from other companies? I don't think I'm really in a position to answer that. I think, in terms of how it differs from an academic postdoc, the projects are designed to be non-proprietary work, so the idea is you should be able to publish it. These are projects that are usually directly related generally to the kind of work that we're doing in the company. You have access when you're a postdoc. You're working in the same labs as the people who are on the project teams. So there's a postdoc I know who he does a bit of chemical biology, so he'll spend a week in the chemistry labs making some molecules, and then he'll spend some time down in the biology labs running some experiments down there. So he's doing that. He's interacting with people who are on project teams. All of these meetings are open to him. Seminars that are going on inside the company are available to you, so you can kind of get a sense of how projects are run. I think probably get a pretty good idea of how things work inside of a company. So that's a unique perspective that would be really hard to get from an academic postdoc. Anyone have anything else to add to that?
Similarly, GNF also has a postdoc program, and every year we'll call for proposals, and the PIs will write them, and then review committee will review them and approve usually about 10 positions. So again, the project you work on is probably non-proprietary, like Colin said, and should be able to publish, but sometimes it may branch into the drug discovery. So it's probably not as a publication, probably not as easy as in the academic. So what you have here is you have tons of resource. It could be good, could be bad in a way. That's how I say it. For example, in academic, if you have a target, you come up with an idea, you want to screen the library, I don't think you can screen 2 million compound library. So you probably 500 compound is your high throughput screening. But in the industrial, you have that too. They will screen that for you, and you can get your 2 compound. But again, on the other side, I went to academic for the postdoc. So what I learned is I really have to do everything, from the molecular biology to the cloning to the protein expression, kinetic, everything I have to do it. But in industrial, if you don't want to do it in certain sense, there are experts there. You can actually rely on them. They probably will do for you. So in a way, it's depends on person to person. Could be a good thing, but bad thing.
Nice. Okay, what other questions do you have? Yeah.
I was wondering, what is the reason question for
Repeat that second question. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, Dennis, you might be the right person. So the question is, what do you do about international situations? Do you support visas or no? And then, oh my gosh, I forgot this first question already. What is a good position that you are likely to get as a PhD or postdoc at Novartis? A good entry level, per se.
Right. So a good position to look for as a chemist is like investigator level, investigator 1 or 2. And in chemistry, I think we start at investigator 1, regardless of if you have a PhD or a postdoc. We hire people at investigator 2 level typically. And then considering your second question, since I am a foreigner, right, I came here with a J1 visa that you probably are on right now. to have a postdoc at Stanford, and Novartis supported me in, first of all, getting an O1 visa. And from that, now, when you were with the company for 1 year and kind of perform well, they also help you with a green card. And now I'm in the process of applying for a green card, and it actually already got granted. And Novartis helps you. You know, they have lawyers. It's a big pharmaceutical companies, and it is pretty much for sure that you will get this green card if you're already on an O1 visa. So we don't discriminate, obviously, nationalities, or if you like a foreigner, we don't mind that. We want basically the best people. We want the best scientists, regardless where they are from, and what their background is. We just want people to be able to think critically, to help us solve problems, and those are things that we look for, and not nationality. And if there's a visa issue, we have a very strong law department that can work out pretty much every issue. For example, my associate is Canadian. He's here on the TN visa right now. We're trying to move him to H-1B, and then from there we can move him to the green card. So we have in Emeryville actually very many foreigners, so probably even more foreigners than Americans, actually. And we can work it out. So that is definitely no downside to be a foreigner.
That's great to hear. Any other add-ons to that, or did Dennis cover it? Great. Okay, what other questions are out there? We have time for maybe one more. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about the application and interview process?
Okay, so what's the application and interview process like?
Okay, I can talk about the GNF process. So when we have a job posted, and if you see it online or somewhere, so you apply, right, electronically recently, most time, and then all of those are forwarded to hiring manager, regardless what route of the channel. Even people in GNF, it still goes to the hiring manager. A hiring manager will go over it and looking at the techniques, expertise, is this the right fit for the position? And it is usually they will select a handful of the people. First, they do the phone interview, and then through that, they probably select 2 to 3 candidates for the on-site interview. So sometimes if you are local, I was talking to some student, they probably just invite you for an informal interview instead of phone interview. So you do have an advantage of being local.
And maybe I can tell my story a little bit. So I actually had an on-site interview, or like an on-campus interview, sorry. So Novartis came here to interview people from the chemistry department that I was a part of 2 years ago. So they kind of liked me there. So they invited me to this kind of informal interview, which is a lunch, right? So you basically bring a couple of slides to a lunch, and then you talk to 3 to 4 people that have a lunch with you, and one of them is going to be the hiring manager, and then 2 to 3 people who are actually on the level you are applying for. And when you pass this kind of stage, then they invite you for an on-site interview, and that is going to be like a full day interview, where in the morning you will give a presentation in front of the department. Mostly people from your role and people that you're interviewing with during the day will be attending this talk. There'll be a Q&A session where you'll be asked a couple of questions to your research and kind of critical thinking skills. And then during the day we typically have 2-on-1 interviews. So we'll have like 2 people from your level that you're applying for interviewing you, or if they are higher ups like senior investigators or like director levels, they'll be 1-on-1 with you, and that will be kind of more a higher level interview. In those 2-on-1 interviews, mostly we focus on your research. So we do ask you, why did you make those decisions that you made? What is driving you? What are your motivations? And we'll ask some behavioral questions in general also, right? And then in the one-on-one sessions, it's kind of more the higher picture. We've kind of find out your motivation and these kind of things. And then we also do have like a lunch with where you go with associates. It's meant to be like a more informal kind of session on this on-site interview, and you go out with them, talk about sports and whatnot. So, kind of interests that you do have outside of research to make it a little bit more fun. And then also we'll have a dinner later on, and that's also typically a very loose kind of dinner where we don't talk much about science, but more about your soft skills, I want to say, right? Other interests than science.
So just to add one thing, on average, you're going to see over 10 people during the day, and the process can be exhausting at the end.
Yeah.
Cornelia just asked me to mention how long the interview day was. It's true. I mean, the on-site interview, it is a long day. Usually starts, you do a seminar at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then you'll basically have sort of back-to-back interviews through the rest of the day until 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and then you go out for dinner. So it's exhausting. So my recommendation would be to get a lot of sleep. And it's the kind of thing where you will get better at it as you go along. It certainly was the case for me. The first couple of interviews you do, you're sort of refining how you present yourself and how you present your stories and how you answer questions. So don't, if the first few don't go as you planned or as well as you hoped, don't feel too bad about it. Interviews are a funny thing. Sometimes, they work out really well. It can depend upon, who's on your interview schedule, what kinds of questions you get, how you're feeling that day, all those sorts of things. So don't feel discouraged. As I said, if you have some, if you go for interviews and you don't get the offer, just, keep at it. But one thing I would say, too, is that sometimes there are questions about the online application process. Every job is always posted online. And sometimes there's a feeling like, I had this, too. You'd submit an application online, and it sort of seems as if your CV disappears into a black box to be potentially lost forever. And it's actually not true. They are all forwarded to the hiring manager. They're all seen. They're not lost. So have faith that it will be seen. Having said that, if you do know somebody inside of a company who can vouch for you, that's really, really valuable. So, it never hurts to get in contact with somebody that you know inside the company. And so this goes back to sort of talking to people and building a network, and that's a great way to give yourself a leg up. On-campus interviews are also great. I would say if you have somewhere geographically that you really want to be, I would try to, if you can, do your postdoc in that area. If you're a local person, that really, it can facilitate you getting that interview quickly. It's if you're a local person, we'll say, hey, come meet us for lunch. We'll meet them the next day. If everything goes well, bring them in for an on-site interview the next week. It just happens much more quickly.
I know you're tired of hearing it, but networking is everything sometimes, so don't forget to do that. Okay, so please join me in thanking all 5 of our panelists. Thank you.